Hello and welcome to the Philippines. I'm going to cover some travel news here, some Philippine specific travel news. I want to get some input from many of you. Many of you have booked flights in the coming year, 2021, and what your experiences are. Are your flights being canceled? Do you have travel insurance? Really looking forward to input from you folks, what you're doing, what you're hearing. And then I'm going to cover some of the latest Bureau of Immigration at the Philippines, some of their latest news, uh, what's required, who can come in, are there any hints that they're going to open up tourism, and as always appreciate your comments and your experiences, what's going on with you here. Your passports presently, if you're watching international news headlines, many countries, provinces, states, cities are back under lockdown. Some are opening back up. Those passports only get you into a few countries now, Mexico being one of them that has fairly lenient process to get in, to fly in, and they've got direct flights, I think, from Europe and the Americas and a number of different places where you can fly in. I think most of the resorts are requiring masks, but that is about it right now, I think. If I had time and money and wasn't where I wanted to be, I would probably go to Mexico. I know at least one of my subscribers. Are you still down there, Mr. Lollygagger? And what's your experience? Would be interesting to hear a little bit about that. Any others who have traveled to other countries, what is your experience? There has been some news. In fact, UK, I think, is United Kingdom, is setting up a program where you can test after when you're in the country for 5 days. You take a test at the end of 5 days, and if you're negative, that's the end of your quarantine instead of what was 10 days. Other countries are starting to open up a little bit. Thailand had a special visa that very few people took advantage of, and they are now expanding it, but still it comes with the longer quarantine, so I think they're going to find that isn't going to work. Uh, the Philippines is allowing more and more travel into some tourist areas, but not all. But they still have restrictions. And what they have found in some cases, they were at first they were allowing groups to come in to hold meetings, and they had little to no interest in that. And now they've expanded to more. They've dropped age requirements in many areas. There was an age requirement like under 15 or over 60 or 65 weren't allowed. But Filipinos travel as families, so they have dropped the age limitations in many areas. Slowly, far too slowly, in my opinion. Um, I'll get a little more into some details and data a little bit later that some of you will find very interesting. Those of you who have booked flights in the coming year, and I know there are many of you who have told me that you've got a flight in January, February, March. Have you purchased travel insurance? And does that travel insurance cover cover medical treatment for COVID? A lot of the insurances would have in fine print where they would not cover pandemics and those types of things. Uh, More and more, some countries are starting to provide the insurance, is what I've read. Some airlines are starting to provide more of those types of services. The airline industry, let's talk a little bit about that if you're going to fly. I've read that about 36 airlines have gone out of business permanently already, and we'll have to see. And many airlines have cut way back on flights, furloughed, laid off workers permanently, parked planes. Anyway, here are some of the airlines that are flying into Mactan Airport presently. Not nearly as many as there were before. Manila has a similar situation, not nearly as many airlines flying in and out of there, and not nearly as many flights available. I was going to book a couple months ago. I was going to book Qatar or Cathay Pacific airline, and I followed that flight. And sure enough, it canceled. It never flew. So I would have ended up having to fly a different day, different time. So one of the things that keeps me from booking out in the future is you don't know who's going to be flying, where they're going to be flying to, when they're going to be flying those flights. Very good chance that they're going to get flights canceled, and you will have to rebook. Or most airlines now are waiving the rebooking fees for those types of reasons. The more I researched this, and this is actually my third attempt at making this video, and I continue to do more research, thinking that I just don't know, I'm not happy with the information I had. The more research I did, the more frustrating it became if a person wants to fly anywhere, perhaps a place like Mexico that is open with little restrictions, but any place else, the rules are changing. I found this comment on a Facebook page of the immigration or the airline. Hello, immigration. My British friend traveled to the Philippines last Thursday and was sent back because he didn't have the proper documents, probably. So you don't want to get in those types of situations. With the costs of the tests and all the requirements and the fact that each region, each LGU, local government unit, can set their own rules, change the rules. This just happened recently. The IATF, the agency in charge of all the regulations, they approved banning LSIs, locally stranded individuals, which you could be one if you were off traveling someplace, if you were a tourist here in the Philippines. If you went someplace and you had met all the requirements and the local government decides we're not going to allow any more travel. Our numbers have gone up. The positive tests have gone up. Stop everything right now. And you could be stuck someplace. So those types of issues, the fact that there's not more of a nationwide type program makes it very confusing trying to travel. Now, I have noticed that some of the airlines and some resorts, and there will be more coming, that are trying to generate cash by selling you tickets today, selling you reservations today that you can use in the next year. I think it was Air Asia that had a real good deal for, I think, around 100 US, 5,000 pesos, something like that. Don't hold me to that. A while back, they were offering during a certain period of time next year, you could fly as to many different domestic destinations here in the Philippines for that on that one ticket. You just keep using it, and you had to book out a certain amount of time. Those few restrictions, but it was a very good deal. I just about jumped at it. One risk in doing that, you're assuming those companies are going to still be operating a number of months down the way. I know that at least one of the airlines here, I know Thai Airlines have filed for bankruptcy. One of the airlines in the Philippines has, I believe, they've asked for government help to stay afloat. So there is risk involved. The complete total damage to the economies of the world economies is just it's devastating, and it's so there is risk involved in booking everything out. I was recently asked if I want to take a day trip up to Bantayan Island, and I didn't realize it was a day trip. I said, yeah, I'd like to go up there for a few days. And they said, oh, no, we're going up and coming back on the same day. Well, why is that? Well, a lot of Filipinos work 6 days a week, so they only have one day off. The other thing is they're afraid of taking a PCR test. If they test positive, they will be quarantined in a facility for 14 days, and they will lose out on their work probably. But it's 4 hours up there, 4 hours back, and I said, what are you going to do when you're up there? Well, we're going to eat and take some pictures for a couple of hours. I said, no. And they were going to rent a van, so the cost per person wouldn't be that much, but 8 hours of driving, 8+ hours of driving for a couple of hours. But that's what many Filipinos are doing. They're taking day trips because it's too costly. It's too costly, period, to and they don't have the time to take the multi-day trips with the testing. The PCR test can cost anywhere from about 2,000 on up to over 6,000, depending upon where you get it. And if you are going to travel, check the airlines or the city that you're going into, the area that you're going into. Each area has their different, like here, Philippine Airlines has a list eligible passengers for digital for domestic travel. They're testing partners, so you could go get tested one place and they don't accept the place. Uh, Departure guidelines, and then frequently asked questions about the various destinations. Each one of those destinations would have different requirements as well. Now let me get on to a little more of the logistics and the some of my forecasts for the future. What's going to happen? What's happening? The Trays app, if you're going into any of the airports here in the Philippines, the Trays app on your mobile phone. If you don't have a mobile phone, eventually you'll probably have to get one. I think otherwise they'll start trying to track you with paper. Many of the stores I go in, the stores in the malls now, they've got a little paper form for you to fill out. Everybody using the same table, everybody using the same pens, so not a very germ-free area, virus-free area probably. When you sign up for tours and hotels, resorts, you will get a QR code. You'll use your Trays app to take a picture of that QR code, I guess, and that is a way of tracking you anywhere and everywhere that you go. And then if they find that you have been around somebody that comes down with a positive test, then I suspect they would uh, track you down and quarantine you, I suspect, for 14 days. Now, this whole process has been evolving, as many of you know. The travel industry, different people have been pushing for different ways to open up the industry for months. Saliva test is waiting for approval from the Department of Health here in the Philippines, and it is much cheaper than the PCR. And I would suggest that it's plenty accurate enough from all the medical scientific discussions I've heard about it. Probably, in my opinion, more accurate than the PCR test. The PCR test in many parts of the world is so sensitive. It's been reported in the New York Times and many other places. They amplify the fragment of virus that they find in their sample, and instead of amplifying it maybe 25 times, which is recommended, they amplify it 35 or 40 times. So even a small fragment of a virus you may have had 2 or 3 months ago can show up as a positive. So New York Times stated that uh, based on a lot of information, medical science, that even up to 90% of the tests could be false positives. And a lot of the media has been trying to hide that type of information, bury it. But there are some questions. I don't know about the Philippines, how they do their testing, so I can't really speak to that. But I know in the U.S. and different parts of the Europe that was an issue. Something else I will suggest will happen over time. You will find airlines, as just right now, there are airlines and countries who will only accept PCR tests from certain laboratories, certain approved laboratories. Now, there are a number of different vaccines coming out around the world. Countries are going to be using different types of vaccines. Countries are talking about the UN and WHO are talking about a virus vaccine passport that will allow you to travel. And what you're going to find, I predict, is that you may get one vaccine, and then they'll find out some months down the road that there's an issue with that vaccine, some issue. And so some countries, some airlines will not accept that. And now, is it safe for you to take a second vaccine or not? Will there be some major conflicts with taking two different types of medicine for the same issue. Peter Greenberg has a travel show very well known in travel circles, and I've been listening to him and other people and reading a lot of travel articles. And he is gung ho against all the government requirements and lockdowns and everything else. He has been traveling a bit. He says that he wears two masks on the plane, and he is extra careful. And but he has stated a number of times that he's not going to be one of the first ones to take a vaccine. He's going to wait for the first batch, the first 30% of the people to go get the vaccine, and see if they survive or what kind of issues they have with it. And I think that about half the population probably is in that same boat. That we all react differently to vaccines. The last flu vaccine I had many years ago, I had a terrible reaction to it. The UK has come out and said that if you have certain allergic reactions, you shouldn't take this particular vaccine. My other thoughts and forecasts, predictions are that visas for various countries will change. The cost of visas will change. Thailand is a good example of this. I think they have raised the cost of their elite visas by 20%, I've read. Um, these countries, especially poor countries like the Philippines, are in dire straits financially. They've spent a lot of money. They wasn't in their budget. They've taken it out of other parts of their budget to use on this virus. And here's an example of what you might see with other countries. Entry regulations. You need some sort of test within a certain number of hours. 14 days quarantine at a hotel that you have to pay for it. Cash deposit $2,000 upon arrival at the airport. Local health insurance package that they sell from one of their local insurance companies. You have to buy it from their insurance company. So more and more of that type of thing is going to happen, and it gets tricky to keep up with all this stuff. You know, it can change when you're on the flight headed someplace. That can change the rules on you. If you're in the Philippines and you decide to travel, or if you get to the Philippines, decide to travel, you want to go to either online website or download the app.Philippines.travel, and that is where you need to book your trips, and you can explore. You need to register, and then you can start registering your trips. Decide where you want to go to Puerto Princesa, and it gives me a list of places, accredited restaurants here, hotels here to choose from. So this is the portal that you need to go to book everything ahead of time. You can't just show up at a hotel or a tourist spot, a resort, and just walk in and book stuff. You need to go here, and you need to create an account, book everything. Now let's bounce over to the immigration site and look at that. And over to Bureau of Immigration, some information on temporary arrival travel restrictions, and this is dated December 7th, 2020. The following shall be allowed to enter the Philippines: Filipinos, Balikbayans. Balikbayans basically are Filipinos who have lived overseas, and generally includes the Balikbayan, the spouse of the Filipino. Also, it gets the Balikbayan privilege. Some people call it a visa. Some people call it a privilege of a 1 year stay in the country. Foreign spouse and minor children of the Filipinos. Now, let me say one thing before we continue here, is that whatever country you're in, you need to contact the Philippine embassy or consulate in your area, because these rules can change quickly, to make sure that you don't want to buy a flight and fly in here and have them turn you around and send you back home. Anyway, continuing. Children with special needs, regardless of age, of Filipinos. Foreign parent of minor Filipinos. So if you're a parent of a minor Filipino, that would cover a number of you. Foreign parent of Filipino children with special needs, regardless of age. Accredited foreign government and international organizations, officials, and their dependents. So if you're involved in some charity or something, that might cover you if you're involved with a business here. I know a number of viewers are. Foreign airline crew members, foreign seafarers with the 9C visa. And bounce over to the next page here. There again, November 1st, 2020, temporary arrival travel restrictions. Foreign nationals with the following visas are allowed. And generally, you're not allowed just to fly in. You used to be able to fly in from many countries in the world and get a tourist visa on arrival. 30 days initially, just stamp your passport. These days, you need to get a visa in most cases before you fly in here. They aren't going to give you a visa if you just show up. So foreign nationals with the following visas, the 13 series, the A, B, C, D, E, G visas. And you can read through the rest of this stuff if it pertains to you. Temporary resident visa, special investors resident visa. They're allowing those people in. Except, I think the one exception is if you've got a investor's visa because you are invested in a tourist-related business, I think that you are excluded from that, is what I've read, primarily because most tourist establishments are not open presently. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's what I've read. And section 9D, and you can read the rest of this if it pertains to you. Travel restrictions, there again, December 7th, 2020. The following may be allowed visa-free entry privileges to the Philippines under this Republic Act. The act instituting the Balikbayan program. There again, Balikbayans being Filipinos who live overseas. And their spouses. So Filipino citizens, foreign spouses, and children, regardless of age. So let's go back here. The following may be allowed visa-free entry privileges to the Philippines. So this is rather new. This is a new because you used to have to go and get a visa before you showed up. Now there again, you should contact the embassy or consulate in your area for any other restrictions or requirements. Again, former Filipino citizens, including their spouses' children, regardless of age. To qualify, they must be nationals from visa-free countries under executive order, and that includes visa-free countries, includes a number of, a good number of countries. Traveling with the Filipino, former Filipino spouse parent. So you must be traveling with the Filipino. You don't just show up. If your Filipino spouse is in the Philippines and you're outside, what this is saying is you need to travel together. You can't just show up. And in compliance of the IATF conditions, IATF is the agency in the Philippines that is in control of all the rules and regulations concerning the present medical situation. Additional requirements for arriving foreigners, effective December 7th. You must have a valid and existing visa at the time of entry, except for Balikbayans. There again, it says if you're traveling with your Filipino spouse as a Balikbayan, that you do not need a valid visa upon arrival. That is something that is new. You need a pre-booked accredited quarantine facility. and you need a pre-booked COVID-19 testing provider. Now, my understanding, many of the people that I've met who have flown in here, who have corresponded to me, foreigners, they have got the quarantine facility for rented a facility, a hotel, for like 3 days, and a couple of them received their test results, depending upon what time of the day your flight comes in, of course. You're tested at the airport, very possibly Cebu or Manila, and taken to your hotel to wait it out, and some have gotten the test results the same day. And subject to the maximum capacity of inbound passengers. Now that's a key. Several months ago, I think Mactan Airport had a capacity of 400 airline passengers a day, their capacity to test those people. Then it went up to over 1,000. Now I suspect it's several thousands every day now. I have not seen current figures, but there are tens of thousands of Filipinos still trying to get back to the Philippines. They've lost their jobs in various countries, trying to get back to their family and their provinces. One problem with that is that many of the provinces are not accepting anybody from outside still, even people who are from, that's their home. Imagine not being allowed to come back to your own home. They just don't have the capacity to test and quarantine these people, and many of them they're subjecting, even if they have a negative test, is what I've heard, is that they're subjecting them to 14-day quarantine. A friend of mine's co-worker was going to go from Cebu to Bohol. He's been separated from his wife, who lives on Bohol, for about a year, 10, 11 months, and went to get all the requirements. The wife had made the requirements, gotten requirements, the acceptance of her husband from the local Bohol governments there. He had gone to get the PNP, the Philippine National Police Travel Authority, all that stuff, and they told him that he was going to have to quarantine 14 days before his trip to Bohol, so he wouldn't be able to work for 14 days before his trip. And he was told that once he got to Bohol, he would have to quarantine for 14 days, even though he had a negative test. So just really depends upon where you're located at. And additional requirements for outbound Filipinos. Now, a number of you have asked me whether your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, can come and see you, fly out to see you. Well, Filipinos can't just buy a ticket and fly out. There have been different restrictions on them, especially if they're in the medical field. They restricted all nurses and doctors from leaving because it was thought that they would need them here in the Philippines. So anyway, here are the requirements. If a Filipino wants to fly out to meet a friend someplace, or you need confirmed round-trip ticket, so you can't buy a one-way ticket. You need travel and health insurance to cover travel disruptions, hospitalizations in case the COVID-19 infections during their allowable period of stay abroad. Now, I don't know, I haven't read anywhere where they get that type of insurance. Anybody have experience with that? Let us know. And 3, you need the BI declaration of acknowledging the risks involved in traveling, including a risk of delay in their return trip. So it appears that your dreams of coming to the Philippines or Thailand or many other countries presently is going to have to remain a dream. Guaranteed that changes are coming, and we can guesstimate about what some of those changes will be. But anyway, I was confident for many months that the insanity and the damage, the knowledge of what the damage of these lockdowns would be, that countries would open up much, much, much sooner. It just seems to me so bizarre that, and I think the data more and more is showing, and there are more and more doctors, professionals, scientists pushing back. There are lawsuits coming out about all these lockdowns and the damage that is done. And there are a number of countries where it's actually shown, the data shows that that overall deaths for these periods are no greater than other years during flu seasons, virus seasons. Uh, anyway, those types of topics seem to be off the table. You're likely to get censored if you talk too much about that sort of thing. Uh, there are a couple sites. Ivor Cummins puts out a lot of data on YouTube, and a number of other sites, medical and scientific sites, that put out a lot of data about the tests and the data and the damage that's being done by the lockdowns. Anyway, thanks for watching. Safe travels, and I'll see you next time.